do the armhole of the Stonepoint and Jones silhouette. I'm going to do a medium large, but instructions are there for everything. This is the part we're going to be doing. This is the beginning of the armhole, and this is the top of the shoulder that I'll show you so you don't get confused. I'm also going to talk, I'll talk to you a little bit about, here you can see you try it on and you want it down to about your knees, and we'll talk about how to switch from adding on, because through this entire thing you will have been adding on. As you can see, can't get it all in, but here's the chain where you started, and here both sides are the same, but for landmark we're going to make this part the hem. So let me turn this over, and we're going to make this part the bottom of the silhouette, and we're going to make this part the shoulder. Now measuring is how you measure is, this is how you would count rows. There's a chain right here, then there's row 1, this is row 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it's going to be about, you're going to be doing 10 rows for medium to large, and that's going to fit a 36 to 40 inch bust. And bust measurement is not your bra size, it is measuring the fullest part of your bust. If you're going to wear it over clothes, put on a bra, measure around the fullest part of your bust. If it's going to be a swimsuit cover-up, put your swimsuit on, measure around the fullest part of your bust if you don't know what size you need. So that's how that works. This is about 9-10 inches right here. And then it says, it gives you instructions on how many clusters. You're going to be increasing clusters here. You started with this many, you're going to be increasing. And for medium to large, you're going to have 13 clusters and a V-stitch in the row. So I changed to a blue color just so you could see easier. And it says here for the medium to large to chain 19. I'm going to show you a way to keep the chain from twisting, but if it twists a little bit, don't worry about it. Chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take off your hook and put your hook through any place down below. Give yourself a little room, and then put this back on your hook. Now we're going to ignore this. We're going to pretend this isn't here. You're not going to be doing anything with this part. It's just to hold it from twisting. Now we had 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Now if you're making a circle just as a hint for something else, you would have this part on your hook. You would just pull through and it wouldn't be twisted. But for what we're doing, remember we're pretending this doesn't even exist. We're going to take this down and we're going to skip the 6 clusters that it says to skip for medium to large. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it says to go to the stitch after the cluster. So this is part of the cluster. The stitch after the cluster would be here. So you can put it here or here. It won't matter. So I'm going to go, it doesn't matter, either one, but you want to go the stitch after the cluster. So here's your cluster, and this is afterwards. Okay, and remember we're just ignoring this part here. We're ignoring that loop we put on, and we're going to slip stitch the chain to the cluster. Now leave this on your hook, leave this alone. Okay, and we're going to slip stitch, and now we're attached. Okay, now this is the part where you take this off. Okay, that was ignored the whole time. Pull it and take it off, and then we just leave it alone. That kept it from twisting. We are going to twist it on purpose just a little bit. Then it says to put 3 crochets in each cluster. You can we're going to do +1 stitch. I'm going to do my +1 stitch right here. But we want this kind of free flowing right here, because this is going to have to be twisted at the armpit on purpose. So there, you notice we're going to do one more stitch than what 3 clusters would be in 6. So if we do 3 clusters in the top of 6, that's only 18. So we want an extra stitch. So you can put all 3 in here if you want, or you could spread it out, put one here, one here, one here. It doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. I'm going to put 3 single crochets in the chain 1 space of each cluster. Do it how you want. I'm just doing it this way because it's easier. Do these loose though, because obviously a single crochet is tighter than a double crochet, so try and keep these single crochets as loose as possible. So we're going to do 3 in each one, and I'll show you what it looks like. And I know mine doesn't look great because it's a different color, but yours is going to look super. We're just giving the armhole a little extra structure by doing this, and we're going back to the spot we need to be at. So we've got to kind of reverse directions here. So that's all. We're going back to where we started on purpose and adding structure to the armhole. So that's the reason for it. Maybe it'll help you remember if you know why. I like to know why I'm doing something and what's coming next, and I'll show you this. Okay, so I have 19 stitches, and so this is where we will begin to build the back of it, and this is the inside of the armpit. And so this way we have a nice place. We have a nice place of single crochets to where we add our so we can add our sleeve. Okay, now here we want to go in the bottom loop of our chain right here. So we are going to have to turn it, and we're going to have to turn it at the bottom also, but we want the bottom loop. So let's talk about the top loop and bottom loop of our chain. These are really big, so it's really hard. Here's the top of our chain. There's a front loop, back loop, and down right there would be the bottom loop. Front loop, back loop, bottom loop. And don't worry if you get a little bit confused. We're gonna be hiding it in the armpits, and it's not gonna look messy because it's the same color. So we're gonna be doing 19 single crochets in the bottom loop of this chain 19 that we just made. And some of these are gonna be a little bit hard to find, so you have to dig for them. And I will meet you down at the bottom of the chain. Okay, here I am at the bottom of the chain. I single crocheted down. Here's where it says to twist the chain so that it lays flat. Here's how you want it to lay. Okay, this will be the inside of the armpit, the armhole where you put a sleeve, and this will be where we start building the back. And see, I'm down here and it's pretty twisted already, but I want to make sure it stays this way. Let me show you so that it stays this way. It stays flat up here, and then you can twist or do whatever you need to do down here. Now I'll show you a couple ways. See how twisted I am? And if I were to go in the back loop of this last stitch, I'm on stitch 18. If I go in the back loop, that wouldn't really work. So I'm just going to let this twist. If you want to go around the whole thing, go around the whole thing if you can't find a stitch. Now it looks messy. It won't show. It is in the armpit, and it's honestly, it's not a big deal, but it's in the armpit. Now see how I'm kind of on the wrong side. I kind of need to be back over on the other side. So I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to get it twisted how I want it to be twisted, and just kind of hit the top of this. Hit 2 loops if you can. If you can't figure it out, go around the whole thing, and I'm just going to say, oh, I can't figure this out, and you'll find that it won't matter. So you can't see it, so I'm just going to go around the whole thing. I'm going to say, oh, I don't know, it's a mess, and I'll straighten it out on the next one, and then I'm just going to slip stitch where I slip stitched before. So that's going to be your save all, so that when you go back you can twist it either way. See, I went around the whole thing and slip stitched to where I started, and it looks perfectly neat and nice. The inside of it even looks perfectly neat and nice. Okay, so then immediately you're going to see that you have right there, you have your chain one space of your cluster, and we're going to make a row going down to the bottom of the garment. So it's going to have an armhole and a row. Now don't worry about this part. Don't keep taking it out. Other people have done that. Just leave it like this. Will look, it can kind of be twisted either way here. Great. I went around the whole thing and slip stitched to the first one. So don't stress about it. Now we want to immediately begin a cluster right here. And that's two double crochets, a chain one, and 2 double crochets. And so that's what we want to just continue to do all the way down. Okay, and see, this looks like, well, this could be twisted either way. We're going to be working on keeping this part flat, but you'll see how you won't even notice the next row up. So see how we just go immediately right there and make our first cluster. Now make a cluster all the way down, and I'll meet you down at this one. Okay, here we are at the bottom. Oops, I'll give you a better look at this. We have we have an armhole, and then we have a row underneath that armhole. And then here in the bottom, I'm going to just give you a couple of quick helps in case you need them. Now, it said to try it on and you want it down to about your knee. Remember, we're making the front, armhole, and back, and then we're going to cut our yarn and make the other side, and then join them in a real pretty manner. So if you're down here and say it's not down to your knee yet and you need to keep adding on, then here's that V-stitch that you made from the row before that's chain 3 double crochet in the same stitch. So if you want to still add on, you're going to add a full cluster right here, and this is if you need it longer. You're going to add a full cluster. This is just to explain the direction so you can see it while we're here. Why not look at it? Add a full cluster, and then to add on, as you have throughout the whole thing, you would chain 3, turn it over, and in the same stitch, double crochet, and then that gives you a place to add on an extra cluster. And then you would go immediately right here and make another cluster. And so that would keep adding on. And it's supposed to kind of look like an angel wing, and it'll even curl over a little bit as you add on. That's fine. It looks awesome. But say it's long enough and we need to change the pattern. So when it's long enough and you come down to this extra V-stitch that's made, when it's long enough, you just add another V-stitch. And that is a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the V-stitch. So you're going V-stitch to V-stitch right here to begin keeping it the same length on bottom. So then you would want to, then we're going to flip it over so you can see, and we're going to add just a cluster on top of this V-stitch. So then the clusters in the V-stitch will begin to alternate. And how we do that is just chain 2. We'll pretend that'll make the first leg of our cluster. Then we go in the chain 1 space, make another double crochet, chain 1, and 2 more double crochets. But do try it on and see where you want it to stop, because you know everybody's different height. So right here, now we went V-stitch, V-stitch, and now we're adding a cluster. And then we go back up, we crochet back up, and begin to crochet back up and put a cluster in the top of each cluster, and I will meet you right here at the armpit. Okay, so let me show you what I did. I worked from the bottom back up, and we're now at that armhole. So let's think about this and think about which side of this chain we need to work on. Okay, I put a cluster on top of a cluster. Which side? So we need to flatten out this top, work down here, and so it is this side. See, we made this pretty movable. So it's this side of the chain we need to work, is the side we need to work on. So we're going to skip 2, and I know it's a little messy. Sorry about that. That was my phone. We're going to be to recap, we're going to look at this and we're going to see that it's flat here. And so this is the part of the chain that we need to work in. This looks a little messy. Don't worry about it. It's not going to matter. We just need to count. We just need to skip 2 stitches on this chain. And look, here's 1 and here's 2. You can also just eyeball it if you need to. So we're going to go about here and we're going to put a cluster. And it's okay because you can skip 3 if you need to, or just skip 1 between the clusters if that's what works out up at the top. So this is I'll tell you what you need to be picky about, and I'll explain what you don't need to be picky about. But put a cluster, 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets in the same stitch. It's just like when we started off. We're going to have just like when you started, you had 5 clusters and a V-stitch in your beginning chain right here where you started. It's going to be just like that. And so we're going to do, we skipped 5, so we're going to do, or we skipped 6, so we're going to do 5 clusters. We're going to skip 2 on the chain. We're going to do 5 clusters and a V-stitch at the top. And so it's just to match this. So remember, this has 6 clusters. So the top is going to be a V-stitch instead of a cluster. And work your clusters, skip 2, oops, work your clusters, skip in the same stitch, skip 2, work another cluster for 5 clusters and a V-stitch. Now, you know, if you skip 7 clusters, you would do 6 clusters and a V-stitch along this chain. And that way we're continuing on the pattern, just exactly right. It'll match from the front to the back. It'll be nice and symmetrical. And that's part of the reason this needed to be pretty loose in here, because the whole thing is a loose kind of thing. So we have 3 clusters. See how they just continue on right here? And it's, you know, it's not really gappy or anything. I mean, the whole thing has big pretty gaps in it. It's real lacy and open. So don't worry about that. This is, since we're using a 4-weight cotton yarn, it's going to be sturdy even if it has big lacy parts in it. So I'm just going to do this real quick, and we're going to, I got 4. Now I've got 4 of them, so I skipped 2 and here would be 1, and I skipped 2 and here would be 1. So mine turns out perfectly with 2 in between, because there'll be 2 at the end. So mine turns out right, but if not, just only skip 1, plan it out, only skip 1, or you could skip 3, do whatever you need to do in case your chain doesn't turn out, in case this armhole part isn't exactly right. But it doesn't have to be exactly right. I'll let you know what does. This one doesn't happen to be at all. This part doesn't have to be exact. So, and then we skip 2 and we put a V-stitch in here, which is double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Now Next, we're going to do this funky thing, and it's only one time that we do it. And there's a picture in here that shows you where this is supposed to be. Here's the picture. Now, what we're doing is we're actually putting 2 double crochets. Here's our V-stitch. Here's our previous cluster. We're putting 2 double crochets around the post of the shoulder, of the last cluster at the shoulder. And so that's what we're doing. So we're finding this. We need to have 2 here. If you have more than that, don't worry about it. But we're finding here's our last cluster. You see? It's our final cluster, and here's the post of that double crochet. Here's the post. And so we're going to wrap our yarn, go around the whole post, and do a double crochet, and then we're going to wrap our yarn and do another double crochet. So this isn't a V-stitch or anything, this is just 2 double crochets, and it's around this post. Okay, and so this makes the shoulder lay flat. Then we're going to turn it over, and this part is also, now this part we're not doing again. This part is the only time we do this, but this part we're going to repeat, and this is how we decrease every time. In the very next chain 1 space, we're going to put an entire cluster, and this one happens to be a V-stitch at the top. The next time you come to the top, it won't be a V-stitch, it will be a chain 1 cluster next time you're at the top. So you just immediately go into it, and this is the only time this is done also. Then you immediately go to the next one and put a cluster, and you're going to continue on and put a cluster in the top of each chain 1 space of each cluster, just like you did before. You might want to try this on again if you haven't finished increasing yet. Try it on every few rows and see if it's increased to, see if it's long enough. If it's about down to your knee. This one we decided not to increase, so I will meet you down at the bottom. Cluster on top of cluster. Okay, I'm down at the bottom on the last cluster, and now remember we decided not to increase anymore. So this one we did a V-stitch on top of a V-stitch, and then this one. So I'm going to show you what to do next. When you get down the bottom, you're no longer increasing. It still will curve slightly at the bottom. So it's going to get a little bit longer than your knee. So but since we have a cluster here, we did 2 V's in a row, now we're going to start alternating to keep it the same length at the bottom, so we're not adding on. So we're going to put a V-stitch on top of a cluster. So there's no more, it's just a V-stitch is double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So now we're going to alternate clusters and V-stitches. Okay, so we have a V-stitch. So this is just where we change the pattern. This is where we change the pattern to stop the increasing. And then now we're going to alternate V-stitches and clusters. And so then what we do is we just work our V-stitch, we turn it over, and then we chain 2 to make the first leg of the cluster. Then we double crochet in the chain 1 space, chain 1, and double crochet in the chain 1 space again, just like we did last row, but I just wanted you to know that you are to keep doing that. That's the part of the pattern that repeats, not where we made that, this doesn't repeat again, where we do 2 V-stitches on top of each other. It will always be a V-stitch alternating with a full cluster. And then we work our way back up, cluster on top of cluster, and I will meet you at the top. Okay, here I am. I did cluster on top of cluster. I did cluster on top of cluster, but I'm at the very last cluster at the top of the shoulder. Now we're not messing with this again. This part is finished. What we do here, and what we will do every time we come up to the shoulder now, this part stays the same, is we're going to go into this space, we're going to do 2 double crochets. No chain 1, it's not a V-stitch, it's not anything like that, it's just 2 double crochets. Just makes a sturdy turning point. Then we're going to turn it over, and then that decreases our pattern, that decreases the neckline in the back. We're going to turn it over and immediately make a full cluster in this next chain 1 space. And I'll finish a cluster and I'll show you what this is doing so that you know you're on the right track, and when I say the back of the neckline you'll understand what I mean. Okay, so let's look at this. So see how we're now we are, let's let it focus, we're decreasing by putting those 2 double crochets in the cluster before. Now counting down clusters like this can be tricky when you get down here, so counting your last row is the easiest way. But we turned this one cluster into 2 double crochets and then went down to the next cluster and did a full cluster. And that's how we're decreasing, and that will make, if you look, that will make the back, the neckline V. Now, there's nothing else changed. You've done it. If you've got this far, you've done it. There's some things you will need to be exact about. How find a place where there's no, see how it decreases this way and it slopes this way. Find a place where you have a full amount of clusters. And here we know that we had, just count the holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We know we have 9. So we are going to keep adding on to this, decreasing at the top and either staying, and mine is staying the same. And we're going to find a place where you have full amount of clusters, like right here, where you can, like right here at the armpit. And you are going to put, you have 9 here, you're going to put exactly 9 here. And that you need to be exact about. And then when you tie this, cut and tie this, you're going to make the second piece exactly the same. So those need to be exact. So see where this will be a good place to count, because you probably won't decrease down that far. See, you're going to be dropping a full cluster. Remember how you added a full cluster on this side? You're going to be dropping a full cluster up here, but this is how you do it. And I'm going to pull this out and show you one more time, because this is a part that will repeat. Okay, so when I'm working up this way, when I hit that last full cluster right here, ignore everything else previous, last full cluster, I just put 2 double crochets and turn, and then immediately put a full cluster in this chain 1 space right here, and then work all the way down. And that will finish it. Just remember, you need to match these amount of clusters, these amount of rows to these amount of rows on this side. And then your other piece needs to be made exactly the same. So good luck. There'll be more videos.